The night I caught my brother and boyfriend plotting to steal my company, they were sipping whiskey in my mother's living room, on the same couch where I first told them my idea. My name is Avery Chen. I'm 30 years old, and up until that night, I thought I was building something meaningful, something of my own. My dream was simple. I wanted to launch a data platform that would help small businesses use AI to make smarter decisions. I'd been working on it for 2 years, no investors yet, but I'd finally locked down a prototype, lined up meetings, and saved enough to bootstrap the launch. That week, I had just finished designing the investor pitch deck. I printed out 10 full-color copies and brought them to my mom's house to share the news. That night, Mom invited me, my boyfriend Daniel, and my older brother Ryan over for dinner. She said she wanted to celebrate family milestones. I assumed she meant my startup. I was wrong. While Mom and I set the table, Ryan poured drinks. Daniel sat next to him. They were whispering in low voices, laughing like they had a private joke. I excused myself to grab my pitch folders from the car. When I came back through the front door, I heard them talking, clear as day. From the hallway. "She's too emotionally attached to it," Ryan said. "She's got no edge." Daniel replied, "Exactly. She's brilliant, but she doesn't know how to sell. Investors won't take her seriously." My hands froze on the doorknob. Ryan continued, "Look, with my background and your network, we can take the project and actually get it funded. You'd be COO, I'd take the lead. If she pushes back, Mom will talk her down." Daniel let out a low whistle. "You sure she'll be okay with it?" Then came the sentence that broke something in me. "She'll get over it," Daniel said. "She always does." I don't know how long I stood there, completely still. The folders slipped from my hand. Pages fluttered to the ground like dead leaves. I picked them up one by one, walked into the living room, and laid the pitch deck on the coffee table in front of them. Neither said a word. Mom walked in moments later, took one look at the tension in the room, and asked, "What's going on?" I looked her dead in the eyes and asked, "Did you know?" She hesitated just a second too long. "Sweetheart, this could be good for everyone." That was all I needed to hear. I turned without another word, walked out the front door, and drove home through a thunderstorm so heavy I couldn't see the road. When I got back to my apartment, I sat in the dark for 2 hours, soaked to the skin, surrounded by broken dreams and scattered plans. They didn't just take my company. They took the belief that family would never betray me. The next morning, I packed everything I could fit into my car. Bank balance, $4,853. No job lined up, no investors, no plan. Just raw hurt and the one thing they didn't count on, my will to rebuild without them. I drove until I reached Denver, the cheapest city where I knew no one and had nothing left to lose. For the next few weeks, I lived on instant noodles, applied to every tech job I could find, and cried myself to sleep staring at the same 4 apartment walls. I told no one where I went. I deleted every trace of Daniel and Ryan from my phone. Then, last night, I got an email. Ryan and Daniel had launched their company using my platform. My name, nowhere. And under team, next to their professional headshots, was the last thing I expected to see. A photo of my mother, smiling, listed as senior advisor. I stared at the screen like it had slapped me. There she was, my mother, grinning like she'd won a prize. Her name sat neatly under the title Senior Advisor, listed alongside Daniel and Ryan, as if she'd been part of every sleepless night I spent building that startup. She used to tell me tech was a phase, that investors don't take women in hoodies seriously. Now she was claiming credit for my vision, my code, my years of work. My stomach twisted, but not with sadness anymore. Something else had taken root, something hot and sharp. I slammed my laptop shut and paced my apartment. The floorboards creaked under my feet. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. The article linked in the site's press section only made it worse. 2 brothers and their mother launched next-gen AI firm to revolutionize small business analytics. 2 brothers. Ryan wasn't even in tech. He was a corporate lawyer who once said Python sounded like a video game. Daniel's background? Marketing. He couldn't explain a neural network if his life depended on it. And yet, there they were, grinning for TechCrunch, smiling like they hadn't gutted me from the inside out. By the next day, my name was popping up in whispers. A few people in my old network reached out with cautious texts. Thought this was your project? Weird that they didn't mention you. Are you okay? I didn't answer. I didn't know how. Instead, I poured myself into job hunting. Again. But Denver wasn't exactly teeming with opportunities for displaced founders with no formal business degree. Every rejection email felt like another nail in the coffin. Until one Tuesday afternoon, when I applied for a random listing I almost skipped over. Executive Assistant to Investment Principal, Sloan Strategies. I didn't know who Harvey Sloan was, and frankly, I didn't care. I needed a paycheck. The next morning, I got a call. He wanted to meet. The building was older than I expected. No glass elevators, no sleek lobby music, just a metal plaque by the elevator that read Sloan Strategies and the smell of stale coffee in the hall. I expected a formal interview. What I got was chaos. Stacks of papers everywhere. A whiteboard filled with scribbles in red marker that looked like conspiracy theories. And in the middle of it all, a man in his 40s with rolled-up sleeves and wild energy. Harvey Sloan. He looked me up and down and said, "Can you handle mess?" "Have you met my family?" I replied. He laughed once, then handed me a chair. The interview lasted 15 minutes. He asked about nothing on my resume. Instead, he pointed to a diagram on the board, a tangled mess of metrics and projections, and asked, "What do you see?" I stared at it for a moment, then got up, erased half of it, and redrew it using a flow model I used to visualize user data. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then finally, "Start Monday." It wasn't glamorous. I spent the first week cleaning his office and organizing files. But I listened, I watched, I learned. Harvey was brilliant with numbers, but hopeless at explaining them. That's where I came in. I started turning his reports into pitch decks, creating visuals that told a story. Clients began noticing. His small firm started gaining momentum. 3 weeks in, he called me into his office. "You ever think about starting again?" he asked. "Every day." "I've been wanting to launch a new firm," he said, "focused on founders who get overlooked. Women, immigrants, people who aren't investable by old money standards. I've got capital. You've got eyes for what matters. What do you say?" I thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. "I don't want to be someone's assistant anymore," I said. "You wouldn't be," he replied. "You'd be my partner." Just as the weight of his words hit me, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should stop talking about us. We're watching." I didn't sleep that night. That text, "You should stop talking about us. We're watching," kept replaying in my head like a fire alarm. I'd never mentioned Ryan or Daniel publicly. No interviews, no social posts, nothing. I had buried that betrayal deep and focused on building a new life. So why now? Why this message? The timing was too precise. Harvey had just offered me a partnership. We were preparing to pitch our firm, Core Insight Ventures, to our first major investors. And suddenly, I get a threat? I didn't tell Harvey. Not yet. I needed proof first. The next morning, I created a burner email and signed up for a webinar Ryan's company was hosting. AI for the Everyday Entrepreneur, led by none other than Ryan Chen and Daniel Fields. I watched as they introduced features, my features, from the platform I had written from scratch 2 years ago. They didn't even bother changing the visuals. They just rebranded it with a sleeker logo and tweaked the layout. But then something caught my eye. A small bug in the dashboard animation. A flicker in the transition when switching between client reports. It was mine. A flaw I hadn't fixed before leaving Cincinnati. That tiny glitch was the fingerprint I needed. I screen recorded everything, timestamped it, then dug up old commits from my GitHub backup. The code was mine. They had stolen it line by line. I printed every document and filed it into a new folder labeled Leverage. Still, I waited. I needed more than proof. I needed a strategy. Over the next few weeks, Harvey and I pitched to 4 different investor groups. Each time, we refined the vision. Focused, purpose-driven investments in AI founders from underrepresented communities. We got a few polite rejections, and one very interested yes. They offered seed funding, enough to get us off the ground with a lean team. I was flying high, until I saw the announcement. Ryan's company just landed Series A funding, $6 million. And guess who led the round? Marion Group Ventures, the exact firm that ghosted our pitch deck 3 weeks ago. I stared at their press release. The same buzzwords, the same market gap, even the same target demographic. Harvey leaned over my shoulder. They stole our entire angle. I swallowed hard. Number, they didn't steal yours. He raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? They stole mine. So I told him everything. About Daniel, about Ryan, about the original platform, the betrayal, the bug, the glitch, the message. Harvey didn't flinch. When I finished, he said one sentence, "Let's burn them down." Legally, we contacted an IP lawyer. Quietly, we prepared a full case, code history, visual design comparisons, timestamps, and that bug. It was airtight, but we didn't file, not yet. Instead, Harvey suggested something smarter, more devastating. We leaked the story, I hesitated. You want to go public? No names, just the facts. Let the industry connect the dots. So we did. An anonymous Medium article. The Silent Theft, When Startups Succeed on Stolen Code. It hit the front page of Hacker News in 3 hours. Tech Twitter exploded. Comments flooded in. Devs started dissecting the bug. People noticed the similarities. Then came the twist. Someone DM'd me. An anonymous developer who used to contract for Ryan's company. I have something you'll want to see. Attached was a screenshot, a Slack thread between Ryan, Daniel, and my mother. In it, she said, Avery's too naive to notice. If she finds out, we'll just offer her a token role to shut her up. And Daniel replied, she'll probably thank us for saving her idea. I dropped my phone. The silence in the room felt like it could crush me. The Slack messages were the last push I needed. Until that moment, I thought exposing the stolen code was enough. But reading, she'll probably thank us for saving her idea, in Daniel's name, and Avery's too naive to notice from my own mother. That changed everything. This wasn't about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming my voice and making sure they never got to rewrite my story again. I sent the Slack thread to our legal team that same night. The IP lawyer nearly choked on his coffee when he read it. This is gold, he said. You won't just win, you'll bury them. But I didn't want to sue quietly. I wanted everyone in their world to know exactly who they'd tried to silence. So we planned the strike. Harvey and I scheduled an exclusive investor showcase in San Francisco, right in the tech district. Same weekend as the city's biggest startup conference, where Ryan and Daniel's company was scheduled to give their Series A keynote. We called our event The Founders You Overlooked. I was the closing speaker. But before I took that stage, we needed more pressure. So I went personal. I contacted Marion Group Ventures, a firm that funded Ryan's company. I sent them the full report, timelines, GitHub records, Slack screenshots, even the pitch deck they ghosted. Ours, with the original timestamp, and theirs, lifted almost word for word. Their legal department responded in under 24 hours. I knew we had them when they asked, "Can we arrange a private discussion?" "No," I replied. "Everything's public now." Then came the calls. Daniel first. His name lit up my phone like a warning flare. I didn't answer. Then Ryan emailed. Subject line: "Let's talk." I sent back one line. "Your opportunity to talk was 2 years ago." And finally, my mother. She called from a blocked number and left a voicemail. Her voice was calm, measured, still performing. "Avery, sweetheart, I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. You're doing great things. We're proud of you. Let's not tear the family apart over some technical confusion." Technical confusion. She had helped them gut me, frame me as unstable, rebrand my life's work, and now she wanted me quiet. I deleted the voicemail. The night of the showcase arrived. Harvey wore his usual wrinkled shirt and coffee-stained tie. I wore a tailored black suit, hair slicked back, calm, clear, lethal. As I stepped on stage, the room full of investors and founders fell silent. I started with my story. How I built a platform no one believed in. How it was taken. How I disappeared. Then I showed them the code, the bug, the exact feature flow that had been copied. And finally, I dropped the Slack messages onto the big screen. Names unredacted. Gasps rippled through the room. A few people actually stood up. Then I ended with this. I didn't burn bridges. They did. I just built a new city. The room erupted. But the twist hadn't even landed yet, because just as I walked backstage, one of our team members rushed up to me, phone in hand. "You need to see this," she said. On the screen was a leaked email thread from inside Ryan's company, posted by a whistleblower. It was dated last week. Subject line, exit plan. In it, Daniel wrote, "If the heat gets worse, we pin everything on Avery. Say she gave us permission back when we were dating. I'll fabricate an email chain." And Ryan's reply? "Mom's on board. She'll say whatever we need." My knees nearly buckled. They weren't just trying to erase me. They were planning to frame me. They were going to fabricate an email chain. After everything, they weren't just going to steal my work. They were preparing to rewrite history, to make me the one who handed over the code willingly. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was surgical. Our legal team moved fast. We filed a full injunction the next morning, backed by every document, every commit log, every message, the Slack thread, the leaked emails, the bug. We sent cease and desist letters to every investor, partner, and client of Ryan's company. But the most devastating blow didn't come from us. It came from the press. The whistleblower, emboldened by our showcase, came forward publicly. She gave a full interview to Techline Weekly. Detailed everything, how the platform was built on stolen IP, how I was erased, and how my own mother helped cover it up. The article went viral in under 6 hours. Ryan's company issued a statement by noon, calling the claims misunderstandings. But screenshots don't lie. By that evening, Marion Group Ventures had pulled out. Their Series A funding was frozen. Several clients announced terminations. And then the bombshell dropped. An investigative journalist uncovered that Daniel had already begun drafting those fake emails. Not only that, he used metadata from my old address to make them look real. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. He was indicted for fraudulent misrepresentation and IP theft. Ryan was forced to resign as CEO. His LinkedIn quietly changed to open to work. My mother tried to release a statement distancing herself from both of them, said she had no idea. But her voice memo to me, "Let's not tear the family apart over some technical confusion," was already public. You can't walk that back. What broke her image more than anything wasn't the legal documents. It was the court of public opinion. The same community she tried to impress now saw her as a manipulator who sold out her own daughter. I didn't attend the hearings. I didn't need to. I was building something else. Our firm, Core Insight Ventures, grew fast. After the showcase, we signed 2 major institutional backers who told me, "We want to invest in founders like you. Not polished, not pedigreed, but relentless." 6 months later, I gave a keynote at the same startup conference where Ryan and Daniel were supposed to speak. I didn't mention them, not once, because they don't matter anymore. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It was about reclaiming everything they said I wasn't. Smart enough, strong enough, worthy. At the end of my speech, I looked out over hundreds of faces, some strangers, some investors who once ignored me, and a few new founders who saw themselves in my story. And I told them this: sometimes the people who try to break you aren't your enemies. They're the proof that your voice is powerful enough to scare them. I walked off stage to a standing ovation. Later that night, as I sat in my office, A package arrived. No return address. Inside was a USB drive, labeled simply, "From Daniel." I plugged it in. It contained one thing, a video. Daniel sitting in a bare room, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He said, "You win. We lost everything. I don't even know who I am without what we stole from you. Maybe I never did." I didn't reply. Some endings don't need closure. They need silence. If you stayed with me through this story, comment the number 1. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more true stories of betrayal and redemption, make sure you're subscribed. There's more to come.